The first sign was not the silence. It was the invoice. It arrived in my inbox on a quiet afternoon, attached to an email from the dealership with my son copied at the top. The subject line mentioned a payment deadline set for December 31st. I read it twice before I opened the attachment, still assuming there had been a mistake. When I saw the total written out in neat formal lines, $25,000, I felt something shift in me that had nothing to do with money. The week before the invoice arrived, my son suggested it might be easier if I stayed home for Christmas this year. His wife's family would be visiting. The house would be full. He said it gently, the way people do when they want you to agree without asking questions. I had said I understood. I always did. I have lived alone in Madison since my husband passed away long enough to learn how little a person actually needs. A warm kitchen, a quiet morning, a phone call now and then. After my husband died, helping my son felt natural, necessary. I stepped in when his expenses grew faster than his paycheck. I helped with the mortgage when things got tight. I covered the gaps when there were gaps. We never called it support. It was just what a mother did. I did not ask how long it would last. I did not set limits or expect repayment. Love, to me, had always meant giving without keeping score. If my son's life felt easier because of me, then mine felt purposeful. That was enough. Christmas had never been about decorations or expensive meals. It was about being included, about knowing there was a place at the table. Even if the table was crowded, I had assumed that place was mine the way you assume the sun will rise. No invitation seemed necessary. It never had been before. Now, as I sat at my kitchen table with the invoice open on my screen, I noticed how calmly it asked me to pay. No explanation, no hesitation, just an expectation that I would step in as I always had. I closed my laptop and looked around the room. Everything was familiar. Everything was quiet. Somewhere between being told not to come for Christmas and being told to cover a purchase I had never agreed to, something had begun to change, though I had not yet found the words for it. The gifts I had started setting aside for December rested untouched in the other room, waiting for a plan I was no longer sure existed. I wrapped the gifts slowly, the way I always did, smoothing the paper as if care alone could make things right. A wool scarf for my son, the kind he liked but never bought for himself. A small leather journal for his wife, nothing extravagant, just thoughtful. I set them aside on the dining table and told myself there was time to add more later. "Have you heard back from them yet?" my neighbor Ruth asked when she stopped by to drop off a loaf of bread. "Not yet," I said. "But I will." She tilted her head. "About Christmas, I mean." I smiled. We usually keep Christmas simple, but it's always been meaningful in its own way. That wasn't entirely true. We just never talked about it out loud. Christmas had always worked itself out. I showed up. There was a place for me. Sometimes it was a chair pulled from the other room. Sometimes a corner of the couch, but it was there. I didn't need a formal invitation to my own family. That evening, I called my son. It went to voicemail. "I just wanted to check in," I said after the tone. "Let me know if you need anything from me this week." He didn't call back that night or the next morning. When he finally did, his voice was rushed. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Everything okay?" "Of course," I said. "I was just wondering what time you wanted me there on Christmas Day." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. "We'll talk soon," he said. "Things are a little hectic right now, and the car paperwork came up unexpectedly." "All right," I said. "I understand." After the call ended, I stood in the kitchen with my phone still in my hand. I told myself I was being sensitive, that families were busy, that no one needed to spell out what had always been understood. I folded the gift tags and set them in a drawer, deciding I would finish everything once the plans were clearer. For now, it felt safer to wait. He called me on a Tuesday evening, just as I was clearing the dishes. I wiped my hands on a towel before answering, already bracing myself for the rushed tone I'd grown used to. "Mom," he said, exhaling like he'd been holding it in. "I wanted to talk to you about Christmas." "All right," I said. "I was just wondering when you wanted me there." There was a pause, longer than the one from before. I could hear voices in the background, laughter that didn't include me. So he began, careful. "This year is going to be a little different." "Different how?" I asked. "Her parents are flying in," he said. "And her sister. The house is going to be full. Really full." "I see," I said. We just thought, he continued. With all that going on, it might be easier if you stayed home this year. Easier. He said it gently, like it was a favor, like he was thinking of me. You know how crowded it gets, he added. And we know you tend to adjust to avoid stress, which is why we suggested you stay home. I didn't remember saying that, but I didn't correct him. I can manage, I said quietly. I know you can, he replied a little too quickly. That's not what I meant. It's just a lot, and we don't want things to feel awkward. Awkward for who? I asked. Another pause. It's just 1 year, he said. We'll do something another time. When I asked, we'll see, he said after the holidays settled down. He didn't sound unkind, just distracted, already moving on. I looked at the calendar on the wall, at the empty square around Christmas Day. All right, I said, if that's what you think is best. Thank you for understanding, he said, relief clear in his voice. I knew you would. He hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there for a moment, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the line go dead. I told myself he was right, that it was only 1 day, that being flexible was part of loving someone. Still, something about the way he decided for me lingered. Not anger, not yet, just the quiet awareness that my place had been adjusted without my input, neatly and efficiently, like moving a chair out of the way. I didn't notice the money all at once. It returned to me in fragments, the way habits surface when you finally slow down. After my husband died, my son called every night for a week. On the 7th night, he said, "Things are tight right now." He didn't ask. He didn't need to. "I can help for a little while," I said. "That would mean a lot," he replied. "Just until we figure things out." I paid part of the mortgage that month, then the next. When I mentioned it again, he laughed softly. "Mom, don't worry. We'll figure it out later." Later stretched into a year, then 2. There were other moments. Smaller, easier to dismiss. "My car got declined," he said once. "I'll pay you back Friday." "Don't worry about it," I told him. Another time, "The car needs repairs." Just bad timing. I sent the money before he finished explaining. Whenever I mentioned a plan, he brushed it aside. "You've always got us. We'll figure it out later." The phrase came easily to him, comfortably. From his side, it must have sounded reassuring. One afternoon, after the payments had become routine, I said, "Maybe we should talk about slowing this down." He went quiet. Then, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I just meant a timeline." "Mom," he said gently, "we're still getting back on our feet." I let it go. I always did. Only later did I understand the pattern. Offering help early created an unspoken expectation of continuous support. I offered help before it was asked. He accepted before it was discussed. Temporary became permanent because no one ever decided when it should end. The email arrived one afternoon, slipping into my inbox between a grocery receipt and a newsletter I never read. The subject line was ordinary enough that I almost deleted it without opening. It had my son's name on it and a short line that read car paperwork. Nothing urgent, nothing alarming. I clicked it anyway. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a single sentence above an attachment. "The dealership needs this settled by December 31st. I opened the file. It was an invoice from a car dealership across town, formatted cleanly and professionally, as if it had been prepared for someone who already knew what to do with it. The total sat at the bottom of the page in bold letters, $25,000. I stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar rush of practicality to take over. The part of me that usually thought in solutions, transfers, accounts, timing. Instead, I felt strangely still. I called my son. He answered on the third ring, a little hurried. "Hey, Mom," he said, trying to sound casual despite the invoice. "I just saw your email," I said. "Right," he replied, relieved. I figured that would be easiest. "Easiest for who?" I asked. There was a brief pause. "It's for the car," he said, as if that explained everything. "We needed something reliable." "I see that," I said. "I don't remember agreeing to this." He exhaled. "We talked about it. Not directly, but you said if we ever needed help, you'd be there." "I said that when your furnace broke," I replied. "Not when you decided to buy a new car." "It's not new," he said quickly. "Just newer. And we're already this far along." "So, you bought it before asking me," I said. "We didn't think it would be an issue," he said. "You've always helped before." The words landed heavier than the number on the page. "There's a deadline," I said, scrolling back to the bottom of the invoice. "December 31st. "Yeah." He said they won't release the final paperwork without it. I waited for him to add something else. An apology, a question. Anything that sounded like a request instead of an expectation. Nothing came. "I wasn't invited for Christmas," I said quietly. "That's different," he replied, a little defensive now. "This is just logistics." I closed my laptop. In the space between being told to stay home for the holidays and being handed a bill with a deadline, something finally came into focus. I could be excluded without discussion. I could be overlooked without explanation. But when money was involved, my role was suddenly very clear. He called again that night. This time, he didn't sound rushed. He sounded careful, the way people do when they think the problem is tone, not substance. "Mom, you're overreacting," he said gently. "It's just a payment. You're making it into something else." I said I needed time, I replied. "That's not overreacting." "You didn't say yes," he said. "That's what threw me." I held the phone tighter. I didn't say no either. There was a pause. "But you always help," he said, as if stating a fact. "That's how it's always worked." "That's how you remember it working," I said. He sighed. "Listen, if this falls through, it's going to be embarrassing. Her parents already know about the car. They think it's done." "I didn't agree to it being done," I said. "You don't understand," he replied, impatience creeping in. "We're already committed. The dealership's waiting. People are expecting this." "People," I repeated, "not me." "That's not fair," he said. "Family helps family." "I am family," I said quietly. "You know what I mean," he said. "You're reading too much into this." I waited for him to soften it, to ask, to acknowledge that he'd crossed a line. Instead, he lowered his voice. "I didn't think you'd say no," he said. The sentence hung between us. Not angry, not accusing, just surprised, as if refusal had never been part of the equation. "I haven't said no," I said again. "I said I needed time, but the deadline's close," he replied. "December 31st. "That's not a lot of time." "It was enough time to buy the car," I said. He went quiet. Then almost kindly, he said, "You've always had our backs. We counted on that. Counted on. Not hoped for. Not asked." After we hung up, I sat alone with the word echoing in my head. I could trace every step that had led here. Every time I stepped in early, every time I made things easier, so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. Somewhere along the way, my willingness had hardened into expectation. By the time I realized what had happened, generosity had stopped being something I offered and started being something I owed. I opened my email and started to type. "I need you to understand." I deleted it. I tried again. "This isn't about the money. It's about how." Delete. My phone buzzed with a message from my son. "Just checking in. The dealership's asking again." I set the phone down and stared at the blank screen. I knew the shape of this conversation. I had lived inside it for years. I would explain. He would listen just long enough to respond. Then he would repeat the same thing with different words. "We're under pressure. It's embarrassing. You always help." I typed once more. "I wasn't invited for Christmas." My finger hovered over send. I could already hear his reply. "That's different. You're mixing things up. Don't take it personally." I erased the line. Explaining had never changed the outcome, only reinforced the expectation that I'd step in. I needed permission to feel what I felt. Every explanation gave him something to argue with. Every justification turned into a negotiation. My phone rang. I watched it until it stopped. When I picked it up again, there were 3 missed calls and a short message. "Please call me." I didn't. The quiet surprised me. I had expected guilt or fear or the familiar tightness in my chest that came with disappointing someone I loved. Instead, there was a steadiness I didn't recognize at first. I wasn't angry. I wasn't rehearsing what I would say next. I wasn't bracing for impact. I was simply done explaining. For the first time, I let my silence stand on its own. No defense, no footnotes, no softening the edges so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable, just the absence of an answer where one had always been guaranteed. I called the bank the next morning. "I need to stop the recurring transfers," I told the woman on the line. My voice sounded steady even to me. She asked for confirmation. "Dates, accounts." I answered without hesitation. When she said it was done, I thanked her and ended the call. There was no rush of triumph, just a clean, quiet click, like closing a door that had been left open too long. My phone lit up almost immediately. "Did you talk to the bank?" My son texted. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the payment app and typed his name. Then his wife's. I entered $10 for each of them. The smallest amount that still counted as money, the smallest action that still carried weight. Before I sent it, I wrote one line. "I can't help financially anymore. I hope you understand." No explanations, no apologies, no references to Christmas or deadlines, just the truth stated once. The confirmation screen flashed, and then it was done. My phone rang a few minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom," my son said, his voice tighter now. "I just saw the transfer. Is this a mistake?" I listened to the message all the way through before deleting it. Another call came in. Then a text from his wife. "We're confused. Please call us." Confused, not angry yet, not pleading, just surprised that the ground had shifted under them. I sat at the table with my phone face down. I thought about how many times I'd softened my words to make things easier. How often I'd said yes, so no one else would feel uncomfortable. This wasn't revenge. There was no satisfaction in it, only a sense of finality. $10 didn't pay for a car. It didn't solve a problem. It marked an ending, a boundary drawn without raised voices or sharp edges. When the phone rang again, I didn't reach for it. The first call came less than an hour after the transfers went through. I didn't answer. The second followed 10 minutes later, then a third. By the fourth call, his voicemail had changed. "Mom, this isn't funny," he said, irritation sharp. "If you're upset, we can talk. But this isn't how we handle things." I deleted it. Another message came through. "Please call me. We need to fix this." I waited. When he called again, I answered. "What's going on?" he asked, forcing calm. "The dealership just called. They say the payment didn't come through." "I told you I can't help financially anymore," I said. "That was supposed to mean later," he replied. "Not right now." "There's no difference," I said. He took a breath. "You don't understand. We don't have another way to cover this." "You bought the car," I said. "You must have had a plan." Silence. Then his voice dropped. "We thought your help would cover the payment automatically. That you were the plan for the car purchase." The words settled between us. "We already told her parents." He continued faster now. "They think it's paid for. If this falls apart, that isn't something I can fix." I said, "You always fix things." He said, the edge gone. "You always do." "I'm not fixing this," I replied. His breathing turned uneven. "So, what are we supposed to do?" I paused, not because I didn't know, but because it wasn't mine to solve. "I don't know," I said. He didn't argue. He just went quiet. When we hung up, I held the phone steady. I hadn't won. I'd simply stepped back and watched the space I used to fill collapse. Christmas morning came quietly. No early calls, no last-minute requests. I made a simple breakfast and set my phone face down on the table the way you do when you're ready to be present with yourself. Later that day, my son called once. I let it ring. He texted instead. "We'll figure something out." I read it, then set the phone back down. That night, I ate a small dinner by myself. Nothing special, nothing rushed. I noticed the absence first, the space where obligation used to sit. Then I noticed the relief. They came together, uneven but honest. I thought about how often I'd confused love with sacrifice, how easily kindness can turn into expectation when it's never questioned. What I learned this Christmas wasn't about money or cars or deadlines. It was about responsibility, mine and theirs. A boundary isn't a punishment. It's a line that tells the truth. I didn't stop loving my son when I stopped fixing his problems. I just stopped disappearing inside them. If this story resonates with you, take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, or subscribe. Someone else might need to hear this, too. I don't know what happens next for my son. I only know what happens for me. I wake up without dread. I make choices without apology. I give when it's freely chosen, not quietly required. For the first time in years, my kindness finally included me.